What is up? We're back, and this time we are reviewing with spoilers. Uh, One Night in Miami. This is the directorial debut of Regina King, and it stars Leslie Odom Jr. as Sam Cooke, Kingsley Ben-Adir as Malcolm X, Aldis Hodge as Jim Brown, and Eli Goree as Cassius Clay, who you probably know as Muhammad Ali. Um, Nick, let's start off with just our general thoughts on this film. What did
Mhm.
you really like about this movie, and was there anything that kind of were drawbacks for you?
Right. I think let's see, going through my head. Is there anything that like dragged for me? Not really. I mean, looking back, like maybe the first act, like or not even the first act, maybe like the first half was just when there was just sort of like setting the characters up. Looking back, like that was a bit of like just table setting. However, it was very entertaining table setting, so I didn't mind it at all. I really did enjoy just like hanging out with these characters before they ended up hanging out with each other. And it's really that like that second half, I was like every single minute, I was like, this is what like everyone was like talking about. Not that like I was expecting this movie to be bad, but I was like, this is like just to see it all come together. And like by the time like Leslie Odom Jr. sang that last song and there's that montage, I was like thinking big of the big picture of it all. And I was like, this I really enjoyed how this all just came together, how these four just played off of each other. Um, these were really like these are some of the most iconic like people in history, and Regina King casted them really well. She herself did a great job. Um, for a film that like just took for the most part took place in like one hotel room, they did a really good job of just keeping the story going, keeping the dynamics alive, and I had a lot of fun watching this, and I was very excited to hopefully see it get some recognition down the road.
I was super impressed with this film from a directing standpoint
Mhm,
for a debut. I think it's one of those things that we kind of forget. The actors are constantly on set acting in front of camera, so
mhm,
they know all of these movements and all the intricacies of filmmaking. And I don't really think about it like these first time filmmakers who have been on sets for years. They're really not making their first film. You know
mhm,
what I mean? As a
right.
director, um, and it really shows. I think she really masterfully used subtle camera movements, pans, a lot of just still camera on a tripod. Um, and it was really effective in telling the story, and it was subtle. And the I think the most important thing was not to get too fancy with anything, right? Not to let the camera distract from the story.
Right, right.
Um, and I think she did a really excellent job in that.
Yeah.
Um,
I think shot selection and like blocking of just the people of like the four like in the hotel like in the room and also in general like that was like she kept track she and like the editors really did a good job of like keeping everyone like they are here like this is like you never lost track of them, but they were always like there were quite a few shots where they made use of like the mirrors or whatever or like the peripheral vision of people, and I was like that was just really cool. That just came out really well just in a way to keep everyone in the same spot without having them like constantly sit down next to each other.
Right, and it never feels stale, and I think that's really important because a
Right.
film that takes place for almost the whole time on one location could really feel stale without good camera work, without good blocking. I think the constant movement, whether it's Aldis Hodge just punching air
Yeah.
around Cassius Clay, or whether it's them just moving around or moving from one room to another, the constant change of scenery is something that you kind of don't realize is important if you're looking at this for the first time. But if it wasn't there,
Mhm.
the film would really suffer because of it.
For sure, for sure.
Um, I thought that was great. I mean, let's get into the performances because these are I think every single performance here is great. The standout to me is obviously Kingsley Ben-Adir as Malcolm X. This While it's about all four of them, this film is really Malcolm X is kind of the heart of this film. Um, and I think he gives one of my favorite performances of the year.
Mhm.
Um, this is Malcolm X at a different point in his life. Uh, this is towards the last few years. He's contemplating leaving the Nation of Islam. I was going to say spoilers, but this is also based off of real life.
Right.
And you get this really conflicted, stressed out, kind of scared for his safety and scared for his life, which you see later down the line when his house is burned. And then you read about him being, he was assassinated later on. And you really feel that stress and the anxiety and the frustration all coming out of Malcolm X. And you really, I felt that I really felt for him as a character in this film. And I'll let you take over for some of from what your thoughts are, and then we'll move into the other cast members.
I want to quickly shout out Aldis Hodge, because I think of the four, I think he really had the less lines. I mean, he still had a lot of lines, obviously, but I think he was often the quieter one. But that also allowed him to do a lot of just good facial acting on his own. There was his introductory scene where the guys we don't allow in the house, and you just see him sort of very tense. You see so much building up, and he's here we go again type thing. And then that scene when he's also in the bathroom and he's listening to Malcolm outside, and I thought he did a really good job for being relatively the quietest member of the group. I thought he did such a great job of still bringing so much of the emotion that everyone else was either yelling and being passionate about. He did a lot of that, but just internally. So I really have to shout out that. I also have to give shout out to Leslie Odom Jr. I think his Sam Cooke did not unfold the way I thought it was, and I love how they handled it. It was just sort of he was on an economic and popularity standpoint, he's the most powerful of them all. And then I love the conversations they were having, just as what do you do with that power? How does that you have that power, what do you do with it? And he doesn't seem to he seems to have one idea of it, and Malcolm obviously has a different, for me, when the film really got shot up another level is the rooftop scene. Everything following the rooftop scene, I will is this is absolutely it's on fire. Everything about it. I don't know, I loved him in Hamilton, and he's such a different character here. He's a guy who's he's another character who seems to internalize a lot, but he's also the most vocal at times about what he is and what he does. I love the story he told when he was yeah, I let the Rolling Stones record this song, but then we just had to be patient and wait, and we still got what we wanted from them. So those two performances were really great. Of course, and of course Eli Goree did a really good Cassius Clay. I think anyone who gets a chance to play Muhammad Ali, just with the way how the real guy was, I think it's such a fun swagger to bring to life. So yeah, but I was really impressed with Aldis Hodge as well, as Aldis Hodge in particular.
Yeah, I was going to say Aldis Hodge, I think playing Jim Brown had the least to do of any of the four main cast members.
Right.
I think he has some important moments. I think that moment between him and Malcolm when Sam Cooke and Cassius Clay have left, and it's just that kind of quiet moment of understanding, and he's really trying to get, he's the guy who's listening, trying to get to the bottom of what's really happening.
Right.
And I think that moment where he sees through everything that's going on, and he sees that Malcolm is really struggling with something that's much deeper and much more, not deeper, but necessarily, but more personal.
Right.
And it doesn't even have to be said on screen for you to know what's happening and to know kind of the connection those two have in that moment.
Right.
And I thought that was a really great moment between both of those actors. I think Eli Goree as Cassius Clay was he was so good.
Right.
He had the energy, the tone, the voice, that he had that all down. But I think it's being able to have that, and also those crucial moments for him when Malcolm reveals he's leaving the Nation of Islam to start his own group, essentially his own sect. And Muhammad Ali, or Cassius Clay, as he is in that moment, it feels betrayed, and very quickly betrayed. Sam Cooke had previously been saying, oh, he's been trying to recruit you this whole time.
Right.
and in that moment you really feel the deep momentarily momentary moment I can't talk, the deep moment of betrayal that
Right.
he feels in the switch. But you know, and then you feel the turn of him kind of, they have a shot that holds on him and then one that holds on Malcolm, and it's just him kind of calming down and coming to his senses and being like, you know I'm wrong, and
Yeah.
this is what I want to do, and that realization of I'm ready to move forward, I'm ready to be Muhammad Ali.
That's what yeah,
That was powerful.
that's what I really loved about like some of the best biopic moments isn't this movie isn't a biopic, but like some of the best biopic moments are like the ones where you see like these icons and these legends, like you see that vulnerability, you see that like, oh, they were like they are human, they like and sometimes like were human before like they ascended to like that create like crazy legend status. And like I love that moment where like um I loved how it showed up in all of them, like those moments where they're like, we have the most famous black singer and they're all the champion of the world, like in their own like areas, but like they're all like still like suffering, and they're all like putting so much effort to like what's the word, like put up that image. I just love seeing those like vulnerabilities like get extracted, and it wasn't even done in like a humiliating way. It was done in just in a very humanely, like very empathetic way, which again I have to give credit to the screenplay, I have to give credit to Regina King just as a director and how she was able to handle like the presentation, how she directed the actors. I just loved how it just all came out. I also just loved like you could separate any of the four at any point, like place them into whatever duos, and you were always guaranteed like a really great conversation, whether it was funny, whether it was deep. Like all of these four just, I think all four of them like split up with each other at some point, and just to see them all like interact on their own without the other, like that was just really great. I just loved watching that unfold.
Yeah, I think one thing to note is the moments between Malcolm and his kids and his wife.
Hmm.
Um, in a lot of films, those moments come off as cheesy and kind of like we're gonna make it like the sympathetic family.
Right.
But that those scenes I think really anchored the film in this movie, and I think they really nailed it down. And I want to give a praise to the screenplay, because the screenplay does an excellent job of connecting you with the individual characters, buying into their friendship even though they're constantly fighting at each other, like at each other's throats
Right.
with these big, you know theory of life arguments. And I think it really builds tension from page to page,
Hmm.
and from the beginning to the end it's a constant build until the bubble completely bursts. um and I really think it did a fantastic job of that.
It did. Um I hope it gets some sort of screenplay nod at the Academy Awards, or like I don't know, Golden Globes or whatever. Just because I think they did such a good job just like like bringing out these aspects of the characters, and just like, in general just keeping the story going, keeping everyone in place. Like even though they like didn't leave the same area at all, and just to have so many different like arguments about the movies, like central themes, like to have so many, to kind of have like four different perspectives like jumping in and out and intersecting with each other, like that takes a lot of like, just that's a great balancing act. That's a lot to balance, and this was a great balancing act, excuse me.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what else you want to talk about on this film. The directing's great, the acting I thought was fantastic, the writing next level. I thought the cinematography was great. At the lighting of the scene, I thought was really kept it interesting. And I loved when they changed locations. That story of Sam Cooke
Yeah.
in Boston, just, the mic stops working and it's his connection to an audience, and it's Malcolm illustrating the point of how he can connect to people through music in a way that none of them else can, and how powerful his voice is.
Right.
um, and I think that whole concept of finding your voice and using your voice in this film as a theme was really, really well executed, especially in that moment, because you can see why he's saying what he is.
Hmm.
And then when he plays, I love the arguments. The argument, every single argument is back and forth, bringing up good point after good point, and
Right.
it really has you realizing that there is no, you know, there is no one path. There's no clear path. There are only different options.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Sorry, I just want to jump on here just to say, like, again, like the greatest thing about this was that like it made these four like it had these conversations with four of the most famous black icons in the world, but they didn't feel like icons. It just felt like regular people who have like come from these different walks of life, and now it's just sort of like a clash of ideology. Like no one's necessarily wrong, but it's just sort of like that classic like I grew up, like I went through different stuffs, and like I didn't go through the same thing you did, so no. And I just love how those conversations like were written, were performed, and just like I think that was like the real testament to how much this film worked.
yeah. I think that kind of wraps up our thoughts on it. We don't want to go too much into exactly everything that happens because it's so layered that
Mhm.
I'd have to watch the film again, honestly,
Right.
to be able to speak on all the individual layers that wrap themselves up. I mean, the whole Sam Cooke line is awesome
Mhm.
about the slowly unraveling from the Bob Dylan song to the story Malcolm tells about him in Boston. I mean, it's a layer upon layer. That's what I love about this film.
I'll ask one last question. How much of a presence do you think this will have at the upcoming Oscars in terms of like acting, in terms of like directing? Like, I personally hope Leslie Odom secures some sort of Best Supporting nod because I think his Sam Cooke was really well. I know the Best Actor race. You and I have been talking for a while. It's going to be a real tight one, but I also wouldn't mind if Kingsley Ben-Adir managed to slip in there for his Malcolm X.
I think Kingsley Ben-Adir is fantastic and should be at least in the conversation. You know, we haven't seen every film that's going to be nominated for an Oscar,
Mhm.
or going to be in the Oscar race, I should say. But he's definitely deserving of a nomination at least.
Mhm.
I think he's fantastic. I think Sam Cooke is fantastic. Um,
Regina.
Regina, yeah, I think I would be pretty confident that she gets a nomination. I think she was really fantastic in this film as a director. And then screenplay. I don't know what the definition of an adapted screenplay is.
I think I think from what I read, it originally came from a play, and so
Play.
they based it off of that. So technically, it qualifies for adapted instead of original. So
Okay.
I think that might be the
Uh,
category it ends up falling under.
yeah, I would, not knowing everything that comes out, I would say it's worthy of a nomination in that.
For sure. Gotcha.
Um, so yeah, I definitely think this will be a contender for award season. But let's wrap this up with our personal lists. Now,
Yeah.
this just came out. I literally just finished seeing it like 10 minutes ago. So
This
it's
technically
fresh.
does still count as a 2020 movie,
Yeah,
right?
because it was screened in 2020.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh
A
man.
lot of these movies that come out in the next 2 months are technically 2020 movies.
Yeah. Gotta pull up my
Um,
list. It was 2020 for all that happened. It was definitely a tricky year.
yeah. So I think for me, it's in my top 5 for sure. It's battling. I think it's battling Sound of Metal, Small Axe, Mangrove, Soul, and Da 5 Bloods. I think it'll probably come ahead of Da 5 Bloods,
Yeah.
and then it'll be fighting. I mean, it could be my number 1 favorite film of the year. It could be my
Yeah.
number 4. It's anywhere in that range is kind of where I'm going to have it.
Right. I think similarly for me, and my top five was a little different from yours, but I do think it might have I need to rewatch The Boys in the Band, but I think it might have topped that. And I think it might even have topped Mank for all the stuff Mank had going for it. And then after that, it's just sort of like a toss up between it, Soul, uh, Invisible Man, etc. So I think yeah, it's definitely gonna break into my top 10, arguably top five amidst everything else.
Yeah. Well, with that, that wraps up this review of One Night in Miami. Fantastic movie. I would 100% recommend seeing it, though. If you're still here, you've probably already seen it. Um, but don't forget to leave a comment below. Tell us what your thoughts were. Do you think anyone will get nominated, or should they get nominated? Let us know. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the video, and we'll see you next time.
Peace out.